to me, some of the wildest bleep that went down was part of a Friday news dump. The news that Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy was going to leave for the same position with the Commanders. Or really the news that Eric Bieniemy just placed one of the bigger wagers ever on himself. Like, we knew it was coming. But to me, it's still pretty embarrassing that it had to come to this. The dude who just ran one of the league's most impressive offenses for the past 5 years. I mean, one of the best and most prolific offenses ever has to go someplace else to prove himself still yet. Because running one of the league's most impressive offenses ever for 5 years running was not proof enough that this dude can, in fact, coach his ass off. Yeah, I know. Save your lectures. Do not at me with this. Yeah, I know. Andy Reid is calling the plays. I know. Andy Reid casts an enormous shadow in Kansas City and is largely responsible for the offense and for the play calling. Thank you in advance to your emails and your tweets and your calls and all of you who are about to jump into action to lecture me yet again. Thank you. Yeah, I understand. I understand that Big Red has got a major role in the play calling. You know, just like he called the plays when Matt Nagy and Doug Peterson got their head coaching gigs. Just like Frank Reich was calling the plays when Nick Sirianni got his gig. Just like Matt LaFleur was calling the plays in Green Bay before Nate Can't Hackett got his gig in Denver. It's funny how none of that mattered then, but it all matters now for Bieniemy. So credit to Bieniemy for accepting what it is and doing something about it and placing a major bet on himself. So, I never want to hear, anybody try to say, well, maybe he doesn't want to be a head coach. Maybe it's how he interviews. Maybe he's just not that into it. Yeah, from the looks of it, nobody has ever wanted a head coaching job more than this guy and still not gotten it. Or now has risked as much to get a head coaching job. The guy just walked away from a historically great offense with a historically great quarterback in the middle of his prime and a historically great head coach who's not going anywhere. It's one of the best, most stable offensive situations and gigs ever. And he's going to leave all of that behind for, frankly, one of the most unstable gigs in the league right now. And I'm not here to hate on the Commanders. Far from it. You know I love Ron Rivera. But Bieniemy is not walking into a stable situation. He's just not. I love Riverboat Ron. But there's no guarantee that Ron Rivera is going to be there beyond next season. Just as we don't know what's going to happen with Dan Snyder and whether or not he sells that team. About the only certainty is that Sam Howell is probably going to be their QB1. So Bieniemy just left Patrick Mahomes to ride with Sam Howell, and he's putting his career on it. Nothing against Sam. I mean, I barely know Sam, at least as an NFL quarterback. He's only played in one game. He attempted 19 passes. So it's nothing against Sam Howell per se, but you couldn't find a more opposite quarterback situation than the one he had compared to the one he's coming to. Essentially, the Commanders as a whole could not be a bigger question mark, aside from their defense, which is nice. But I mean, if you told me that a year from now they would have a new owner, a new head coach, and a new offensive coordinator, that would not surprise me in the least. Meanwhile, what are the Chiefs? They're the most stable, surest operation in the NFL right now. Eric Bieniemy just made a lateral move, from the surest thing in football to one of the most unsure things in football. And why? To prove something that I think that he already proved long ago. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. I don't mean Bieniemy is. I mean his situation is. Bieniemy's decision is the only logical part of any of this. And yes, you heard me right. This dude's doing this because he had no choice. Obviously, he was not going to get a head coaching job if he stayed in Kansas City if 16 teams had passed on him since 2019. Clearly, if he wants a head coaching job, and he does, because 16 teams have passed on him, he had to leave arguably the most stable job ever in the hopes of getting his dream job. To me, as risky as this move is, the bigger risk is doing nothing at all. Because while there is stability and there's security in staying where he was, if this guy's true ambition is to be a head coach in the NFL, and obviously it is, that was never going to happen if he stayed in Kansas City, because he was never going to get the respect or credit that he deserved by staying in Kansas City. Not as long as Andy Reid was still there, and not as long as Patrick Mahomes was still there. Obviously, he wasn't getting any cred or any respect. Yeah, Rome, well, he didn't call the plays. Fine. That's why he's leaving. To call the plays. To get the respect that I think he already deserved. So what this guy did was he pushed almost every single chip he had into the center of the table, and he bet on himself. The problem with that is, look at the hand he's now holding. It's one thing to bet on yourself when you've got an Andy Reid and a Patrick Mahomes in your hand. So this guy's betting on himself. He's going all in, betting on himself. And what's he working with? Sam Howell, a head coach who might have 1 year left, an owner who might sell, and then decide we don't want any of this. And I like it. Because the fact of the matter is, if he does get that thing done and he turns it around, he almost assuredly guarantees himself a head coaching job. Then nobody can say jack, because he went into a really tough situation and turned it around. If it doesn't work out, I think he's still fine. If he craps out, I think most people around the league would see his body of work and know that he went into a really difficult situation and it didn't work out, and he still gets a coordinator job someplace else where he can rebuild. I like it. I like it. I just know this. Staying where he was may have afforded him job security, but not a shot at a head coaching job. He did the right thing.